Hi, and welcome to another episode of Walleye Chronicles, where we bring you in here, sit down, and talk to you about why fishing is such a big part of your life and how you got there. Today, I have a very special guest from Minnesota, Miss Ashlee Just. How you doing today, Ashlee?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful. So tell me a little bit about how you grew up and how fishing got you.
So fishing was always it was always a part of what we did when I was growing up. Whether we were at my grandma's cabin or, we were on road trips on the summer in Canada or, as I got a little bit older, we did a couple like openers on Winnie, like that kind of stuff. But it was just kind of your normal like kid in the boat type of thing, come with dad and grandpa on the ice or whatever. And
It was the phone.
sorry.
No problem.
So it was just, I was introduced to it that way.
Yep.
And it didn't really become part of my everyday life probably until about 5 years ago.
Okay.
We traveled all over during the summer, road trips, fished everywhere. But once I got married, my husband and I kind of, still did the same thing. Like we would go out and fish.
Yep.
On weekends. My parents bought a lake place, and so we were up there for most weekends. But there was something that happened, and I before I came on here, I was trying to figure out like what was that like pivotal moment, you
Right?
know?
Yeah.
And so when my husband and I actually got into an argument one time because I had asked him, or I had told him, I'm like, I'd really like to try musky fishing. And he was like, he just like turned around and looked at me and goes, girls don't need to musky fish. Like they don't belong musky fishing. Okay. So I divorced him. Not just because of that, but we ended up divorcing. And the first weekend of musky opener after I had left, I was on a boat musky fishing.
Wow.
I have a friend who had offered to take me. Mm-hmm. And so I went up to Lake Vermilion and jumped in the boat and sat there for probably 12 hours. I think we fished for like 12 hours and nothing. And so I was like, well, maybe he's right. Like maybe I'm not cut out for this. Like this. And so there was a moment on the boat where I was just like, I just need you to give me a sign. Like I literally prayed about it. I was like, I need a sign that this is the right path. Not necessarily fishing but like
personally.
Right. Mm-hmm. When you split up your family and your kids, am I doing the right thing? All this stuff. So I just said, give me a sign. 3 minutes later, I caught a fish. Nice. It was almost instantaneous. And the feeling, like my literal body just felt completely different. I was so overcome with emotion in that point when the fish got into the net. Mm-hmm. I was reeling. Obviously, they got it up to the boat. The fish hit the net, and I set my rod down, and I went up to the front of the boat and started puking. Like I don't know if it was anxiety or if it was just like everything. It just. And I remember Matt, he had looked at me from like the back end of the boat and he's like, are you all right? Like I have never had somebody puke in my boat after they just caught a fish. I'm like, I'm good. But after that, like I just remember sitting on, obviously we released the fish and sat there for a little while. And I just remember like going, that's my sign, like instantaneously. And after that, like it's been a wild ride since.
Yeah.
Like, now, I can't get enough of it,
Mm-hmm. So how big was that fish?
That was 48.
That's not a bad first fish.
No, no.
What were you doing?
We had casted most of the morning. This one was caught trolling because after 12 hours, I was like, so we switched to trolling for a little bit and caught it that way.
Awesome.
So yeah.
That's crazy. It's interesting that you, obviously later in life, that you kind of really dove into it, that you have that much of a memory you can recall it like that.
I think it was because it was that pivotal. Like when I look back on literally the last probably 6 or 7 years, that is one thing that just kind of, that moment stuck out. Wow. I asked for a sign and 3 minutes later it was there and it was like, phew.
That's not a bad
mind
That's a
blowing.
pretty good sign.
If there was any sign, that was the right one, and it was right. So fishing is just kind of the direction I've taken it now, and like there's so like, and I'm not even a muskie angler. Like I target them once or twice a year.
Yep.
It's just kind of for fun. It's not. I'm not crazy like a lot of people are, but the entire industry, like all of the species, there's so many things to learn. Everything is a challenge. There's new bodies of water. You just can't know everything.
Yep.
And then also like after going through divorce, you lose your social circle. So I joined a couple organizations afterwards and started networking with people and meeting with people, and it's just kind of unfolded from there. It's been a wild ride.
So when did the TikTok come in around the same kind of time then too?
No, TikTok. My daughter and I placed a bet one day because I was like, what is this TikTok thing? Like, why are you making all these videos? And she was like, oh, it's just, a new app and whatever. And this was probably like two years ago.
Yep.
And I said, what would happen if I ended up getting more followers than you? And she's like, you would never. Like, you're not cool, Mom. And I'm like, okay, all right, well, here we go. Like, here's your next challenge. So I don't use it for like content creation. Like, I simply just use it to document my journey, and where I go and what I do and the fish I catch, and sometimes funny videos. But
Do you remember the first video you posted? Do you remember how many views it got? Because I scrolled back.
Did you?
I scrolled back to see what it was.
Oh God. Oh, I don't. It was probably just pictures.
Yeah, it was pictures. You had 6 pictures. They were muskie, perch, walleye, smallmouth, largemouth, and you had 1,400 views.
Wow.
So yeah, it was interesting. I scrolled back to see.
I should do that though. I should go back, and I don't ever.
You never go back and watch them?
No, I don't.
Every now and then I do, especially if there was like a couple month period where I had like, I mean, if I had good ones or just ones I liked, because a lot of times I like them because I think it cheers me up or whatever. Or a song. Like I'll hear a song, and I'm like, I'm gonna find a way to make a TikTok with that song, so I can hear that song every now and then.
Right. Yep. I do the same thing. I don't usually go back and rewatch them, but I make them all for myself. I don't, I just very similar where I find a song that I just like to, and I'm like, oh, that'll make a cool video. Or like I hear a line in a song and I'm like, ooh, I could put a fish picture to that, like, and that's just, how they start.
Right. Did you ever think you'd be knocking on the door at 10,000?
I did not. I don't know how in the world I got here. Like, really,
You're
I don't.
right there.
I am. But for some reason, man, I can't crack the 10. Like, it's right. I can taste it. I'll get there, but.
It's probably the algorithm. They're holding you back.
It is. They have shut down all views on all of my videos right now.
Yeah. It's a very interesting thing. I mean, it's kind of fun to see like the I don't know how people react to the videos and stuff, and they like them or don't like them. And obviously you being a lady and me being a man, it's a different kind of world that we're living in on our own one. But the fishing community is pretty interesting, and just the kind of, all that stuff that comes with it. So let's go back to when you were a little girl. What's the first memory of fishing that you can remember that we can talk about?
I wasn't actually fishing. I was sitting in the front of a boat on a very, very cold, windy, rainy opener. And my dad was yelling at me to be quiet and read my book when it was wet, because he was going fishing. And it's a family affair and we're going out there.
Right.
So that was on Winnie. I would say probably the other memory, again, didn't actually have to do with a fish, but I was ice fishing with my grandpa on Mille Lacs, and my foot obviously always has to go in a hole, get wet.
Yep.
So the memory that I have is, the grippy socks with like the grip on the bottom. I was putting that on his furnace in his ice house and like making prints on there. But as far as like fish, I don't have I don't have a catch where it was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. That didn't come until later in life. It was just, I guess, the exposure as a
You had the
kid.
exposure, but you really weren't fishing per se.
Right. It wasn't about the fish. It was just get outdoors, get away from the house, go on road trips. It wasn't like, oh, I caught this catch of a lifetime, this 2.5 pound crappie when I was 7, We obviously caught fish, but nothing that didn't come until now later.
Okay. So, what was your favorite trip growing up that you went to? That you guys went on? Is there any travel places that you liked going?
Yeah. So when the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, my grandparents were getting kind of older, and they decided to take one more big trip. We traveled all over with them, but we took one more big trip, and we road trip to Alaska.
Well, that's a long road trip.
We were gone, I think 8 weeks. I think it was 8. We basically drove from Minnesota out to Seattle, up the coast into like Skagway, and then back into Canada, and then up through Alaska. We spent 2 weeks in Alaska, and then on the way home, we drove through Canada, back home. So we were on the road for a long time. We fished a lot of different places, but Alaska probably was the coolest place. We did the whole salmon thing. We did the halibut fishing. I caught my first octopus, which
That's cool.
that was cool. But that was probably the most, I would say, most memorable.
Okay.
We had a lot of trips to Canada, Lake Michigan, Door County, all of that stuff. So I would have to say Alaska.
That's fun. That's a crazy long trip.
It was.
Be on the road,
It
especially
was.
in the high school, all your friends, and you're like, "I'll see you later. I'm going to Alaska see you next year, people."
Right. Yep. That's how, and it was like,
Were you dragged, or were you okay, or were you happy to go?
I was dragged. Yeah. It took some serious convincing. I didn't want to go because I didn't want to be gone all summer. But nope, I was told I was going, and thank God I did, because now I look back on that and I'm like, both my grandparents are passed away. Like, that's a lot, like the coolest trip that I had ever went on with them. It was really special.
So now you're caught your first muskie. What's the next step after that? So you had this epiphany in the front of the boat,
Yeah.
throwing everything up, moving on. What was the next step you took to kind of make that more of your daily life? Did you have gear when you got divorced? Was there things you had, or did you have to kind of
I had to get
everything?
all new stuff. We had some things. I probably had maybe 5 rods and like a half a tackle box, like not much. But at that point, it really came down to, I need to find out, like, I need to learn as much as possible. Because that was a whole different world. The actual fishing part of it, whether you're reading weed lines or break lines or lake maps and all that I had no idea about any of that. That was beyond me. So it was researching. It was like, okay, well, I've obviously caught walleye and crappie and perch before and bass. But I wanted to learn about muskie. I wanted to learn about their patterns and how do you find them on a lake where, so I just started researching. And then, within these different organizations that I had joined and, joined some forums and Facebook groups and all that stuff, just to start learning the information, because I had no clue that's
almost
what
like
this
learning
was.
to walk again, I think, for you, because you didn't have.
I didn't know anything about that. And
you already knew how to fish, but you know where they were or how to get them. I got you.
I had no idea, like, for boat placement and weed lines and inside weed lines, outside, like, what structure? I don't know. We just sit in the middle of the lake and bob around.
Well, it looks the same to me.
Right. So that was, and once I got to that point, it was like this whole new world was unlocked, because there is so much information out there, and you just can't stop learning. And that became like therapy. I could shift my focus from all of the stuff that I was going through in my personal life and just stop and just focus on this. So like within the organizations and stuff like that, I started meeting, some new people and
Yep.
new friends, and they would offer to take me out because I still don't have a boat, like I'm at the liberty of others, but they would offer to teach me, and that the information that I learned was so invaluable because that just sparked this fire. It's continuing to just burn because there's so much to learn.
Right. Is there one person that kind of helped you get going forward, or a couple people that really kind of helped you get you out and kind of push you and saying you can do this? Yeah, keep doing it.
I don't know if there is a specific person. I'm kind of a loner, so I like to learn a lot on my own. Obviously, I'm in the boat with people. But there have been like a few guides that I have fished with that I would have been just fine just not catching fish, but just listening to them speak and teach and like but I wouldn't say that there was anybody in particular. Let me think about that.
What was your
There might
favorite
be.
source to go to? Was it Facebook, YouTube?
YouTube?
Have you burned through every YouTube how to catch a walleye video?
Well, so I used to watch YouTube. There's, a lot of content on YouTube that I used to watch, but now, like, I'm really ADHD and my attention span isn't there. So now I use TikTok as a resource because it's quick. Like, I want to know right now.
Right?
But as far as like learning new techniques and watching them, I mean, it definitely, YouTube was instrumental in that. And then, Facebook, just reading people's comments and, somebody will be like, oh, how's the bite on this lake? And, there's 10 different comments and they're all different.
Right.
And
It's
so,
hard to decipher
Right.
Facebook sometimes, but
yeah.
it does have good, useful information when you can kind of figure out what's BS and what's not.
Right. And there is a lot of BS. Like if that's one thing anglers can do well, it's BS.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you a TV girl? Did you like, there's any shows that will kind of hit your fancy that you like to watch that kind of helped you out, or was it just digital?
A lot of it was digital. I mean, I would say I didn't have like, I wasn't one of those kids who were like, oh, I grew up watching Bill dance. Like
But
I do
meant
now.
I meant like
but-
now. Is there like when you started, like when you got off the boat musky fishing, was there anything you immediately looked for to kind of fill the void that you weren't fishing? Are there like shows you look to watch and like things that would normally weren't on your radar before? Maybe not watching The Bachelor, but now you're watching, In Fisherman or something, or
In Fisherman, obviously. I mean, that was huge.
Yep.
But I watched a lot of like John Hoyer videos.
Okay.
My son and I got to fish with him a long time ago. He was one of like the second people, maybe third that I fished with. And the amount of knowledge he held at that time, and that was probably 8 years ago, maybe, well, 5, 6 years ago. It was like, I was like, how do you know this stuff? How do
you gather it?
keep that in your brain, So it was really cool to learn stuff from him. But there's so much information out there, and
it's almost hard to get it all in,
it is.
right? I mean,
It is.
Like I get bored and I'll just kind of think of something and want to research it and just want to watch it. Like a little while ago, I wanted to figure out about willow cats, so I like just went down a rabbit hole one evening and just like, 3 hours later, I feel like I'm a willow cat expert. I've never touched one in my life yet. So,
Right.
But you can just get kind of stuck in those for hours. And I mean, it's all good information. Hopefully you can push some things you learn from there to something else.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It's just, it becomes almost an addiction. And then you have to kind of weed through because there's so much contradiction because everybody has their own technique,
Yep.
own style.
Opinion.
And that's been the really cool part of like jumping in boats with different people because you get to experience that,
Yep.
Everybody does it different.
That's crazy. So on all these different boats, what's your favorite experience so far since the muskie?
Oh, that one tops the cake. I think now, maybe when I caught my 30-inch walleye, that was another one.
It's a pretty big one.
Well, yes.
So what happened? Go through.
So that we were actually fishing on the Fox in the spring. We were, I think it was a hair jig that we were using. I think, pretty sure. I love a good jigging bite. Anytime that we can find a good jigging bite, I'm all for it. But we were on the Fox in the spring.
Yep.
I had come out here with Jay Stefan, and him and I spent a couple hours out, and you know, we had been joking up until this point, like, we have to get that 30. Like, I'm so hungry for that 30. Now, granted, people, don't get me wrong, people have been waiting their entire lives to catch one and still haven't. So it's a joke. Like, yeah, I want that 50-inch muskie. Like, let's go get it. You know, like, it doesn't always happen. But, and the day before this was probably that's a different story, but probably the biggest wall I've ever seen in my life. But I was so excited for this 30. And we had gone out, we were jigging, and I think that's the one that we almost lost on the net job. No discredit to him, like he got it, but it wasn't necessarily like how we caught it, or like there wasn't anything crazy about it. It was just like, okay, look at that, like here's another goal. You know, I can check this off my list, because it's one of those things where, like, I don't eat fish. So everything that I catch, I release, is for the most part. So now it's more of like a trophy hunt. Now I understand, you know, the patterns of certain fish. I understand where to find them in the water columns, and, you know, inside, outside weed lines or break, whatever. I understand their patterns now. So now it's more of, okay, that's cool. Like, you figured that out. Now let's go. Where do you find the bigger fish?
Right. So was that in spring?
Yeah.
So what was it like coming to Green Bay for the first time when you saw, was it a busy day where it was just packed, or?
So I came on a Tuesday.
Okay. That can be busy too.
It was, I mean, it still was. But previously, like, we have the Rainy River Run up in Minnesota.
I suppose,
that I had done the year before. And that's a shit show. And I wanted to experience something different, you know? And people rave about coming out to the Green Bay area. And so I was like, I'm going to go out there and check it out. I can't get enough of this place. I really can't. Like, if somebody is ever like, what is your favorite fishery? It's Green Bay, 100%.
Why is that? I mean, you're a Minnesota girl. I mean, why is Green Bay walleyes got you hooked?
The fishery itself is, one, it's a really cool fishery. Two, it's beautiful out here. But the caliber of fish that are in that fishery are much different. We have some of the same caliber in Minnesota, but it doesn't matter the species. They're just big. You know, like, it's just a great time every time I come out here. And now, I mean, I'm probably on my 8th or 9th trip out here because
you're here a ton.
Yes. Like, anytime that I get a moment to bring my kids to grandma's for more than a day, I'm here somewhere around in the area.
That's awesome. So that first trip, was a bunch of people on the water? Was it?
Oh yes, on the Fox. There were. I wouldn't say it was like, you know, bumper boats quite yet. It was getting there, but it was bitter cold. I mean, it was like 35-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, it was chilly. So there were definitely boats. You definitely had to kind of, you know, find your way around it, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I always can't believe, I look when it's really busy, and if you can look from the dam all the way to the 172 bridge, I always wonder where all these people park. Like, there's so many boats, but there's where everybody park. I don't get it where everybody parks, but
I don't know. You guys must have really nice launches here with lots of parking.
But they're not really. I mean, there's a couple that are pretty decent sized, but others, I'm like, there's way more boats than there's parking here.
Yeah. Well, like up at the Rainy River, you have to park 2 to 3 miles away from the actual landing.
Wow.
And it's just lines of trucks and trailers for miles. So I don't recommend going on days like that.
So what's that fishery like?
I have only fished it once. I wanted to experience the Rainy River Run, and It was a lot of fun. It was, same jigging bite where
Yep.
you just can't go wrong. Lots of fish. We were very, very fortunate that time. I think my biggest that day was like 28 and a half, but it was like pre-spawn. It was big. I mean,
Yep.
it was a nice, heavy, healthy fish. But we caught, over 10, 15, like 26 to 28.
Wow.
Like it was a big fish day. I went up there. I actually went on Easter. So I told my parents, I'm like, look, I'm not coming to dinner. I'm busy. They understand. They get it. Fortunately. So
Right.
it was a fun time. I don't know that I necessarily have to run up there every year.
Right.
There are a lot of people who do, but that's a lot of people.
Right. It does seem like one of those bucket list things you have to eventually get to and
Yeah.
get taken care of.
Yep.
So what do your kids feel about this? That mom's a fisherwoman.
It's really kind of cool. Because at first my kids were like, oh, you just want to get away from us. No, first of all, like it's my therapy and I need it for all of our sakes. So, but my son, who is now 19, he grew up fishing. Because my parents, they had bought a lake place. And so we have my kids out on the boat as much as possible and, getting involved in the sport. And so my oldest had fished like the high school bass tournaments for, I think like 3 or 4 years before, he was done with school. And then my middle daughter, who is now 15, she loved fishing and they love it. They're fair weather fishermen, or she is anyways. But then she started getting involved in like cheerleading and high school sports and stuff like that. So it kind of took a back seat. But I try to get her out. Like this last weekend, we just spent, with a group called Future Anglers of Minnesota, which shameless plug for them because they're an amazing organization. But, we spent the weekend muskie fishing. We were teaching, I think we had like 20 kids up there. So that was a ton of fun. She was able, it was just her and I that got to go up there and hang out for the weekend with the other people. So she'll do it. She likes it when she does it, but it's not one of those things that's like at the forefront of her mind.
Yep. There's other things to do.
Yeah. My youngest, who is almost 8, is an ice junkie. Like, she is obsessed with ice fishing. And her and I go out all the time.
Wow.
I take her out with me.
The cold
first
doesn't
time,
bother her?
No, I make sure she's pretty
that's
warm. And one of the first times, like I think it was like two years ago, maybe. My brother and I decided, like, we're just hanging out at home. Like, let's go catch some crappies. Like, no big deal. Go to a local lake. I said, probably won't be out there real long because I have Raina and, I would give her a good hour and a half. We stayed out there for 6 hours.
Wow.
She became obsessed. So now she reads the Vexlar. She catches her own fish. Like she is just as excited for the ice as I am. Like that's what we like.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So you're kind of doing the opposite roles, basically. You're teaching your daughter and bringing with you as well to do your stuff.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think or need for it to catch on with them as much as it did with me, because for, my own story is hopefully they never have to go through that. But just getting them outside and getting them, away from TVs and TikTok and like just go outside and, it's just important for them to learn, and they find joy in it. And as long as they do, I'll take them anytime they want.
Right. But they don't think it's odd. Does your oldest think it's odd that you just kind of fish all the time now? Or is that he like that? Does he go with you?
He used to go with me. He doesn't fish a whole lot right now. But him and I used to do some trips. Like we went on a trip with John Hoyer a few years ago, but he's not quite convinced I'm a better angler than him just yet because he's 19 and knows everything.
It could be John Oyer's son, and he would probably think he's better than his dad. I mean,
Right,
all
exactly.
19 to 22-year-olds are pretty, or I would say 17 to 22-year-olds are pretty much like that.
Yes, yeah. But they do enjoy like hearing the stories and seeing the pictures. And my youngest, she just asks me all the questions. She wants to know everything. Whereas the other two are like, okay, cool, mom, you're a nerd. But my youngest is like,
Is there a competition between you and your youngest? Like when you're ice
Always.
fishing side by side? Like,
Always.
mom, you got to do this. Mom, you should be doing that.
yeah, always. The first person to catch a fish is the first person that gets a snack. So
We do it a little differently in our world. The first person that catches a fish gets to slap the other person in the face with the fish. That's how we roll.
Maybe
So,
we'll try that this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun way to go about it. And if you don't remember the next fish that's caught, you don't get to do it. So if you catch a fish and you don't slap the other person right away, and once that next fish is caught, it's over with.
You just can't come up
can't-
behind them and smack them.
Nope, you can't do it. You have to do it once you can before that next fish is caught. You have to do it.
That's
I
interesting.
did take an eel pout to the face last year because it was the first fish of the day. I'm like, oh man, really an eel pout? I didn't say a word, and I just sitting there just waiting, and finally he's like, hey, I think we got to do some stuff here quick, and I'm like, yeah, we do.
Absolutely.
But if it was me, I'd be out of the hole up the hole. I'd be like, hey, get ready.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's really. I should.
The snack thing is
should try
good though.
that.
I'm gonna go for I have a 14-year-old, and if we're not catching fish, the big way to get him to catch a fish though. If we're
Yeah.
not catching fish, he's not really. I mean, he's into it, but it's like if we're having a rough day, he's just kind of like, doesn't really want to be there. But if I throw his snacks out first, that'd be a way to get him to work a little harder.
We always have snacks, no matter what. Like I have snacks in my car right now, and she's not even with me. Like we all just always have snacks. That kept her on the ice for a little while. Crappie bites can be, as the school circles and stuff
Yep.
like that, it can be highs and lows. And so during her lows, we would have snacks and we would get outside and run around and just keep it fun. Now
Yeah, it should be fun. I mean, it's just, it's fishing. I think sometimes we get caught up in the taking or catching fish to take pictures to post online, and sometimes it's just getting out there. To me in the mornings, like on a boat drive out, is like the best part of the day. If you don't, even if you don't catch nothing, it's like I still get the boat drive. That's the best part. You always get that, or the way in sometimes is enjoyable too, but you're usually sad because you're going home.
Yeah, that's very true. I don't think I've ever gotten off the water, even completely skunked or just catching drum. I don't think I've ever gotten off the water and was like mad or sad or angry because I just got to spend the day on the water.
Right. Usually it's more because it's over with.
Right.
Right. And
I don't ever want it to end. And like I'm literally planning my next trip as soon as that one's done. I mean, I have a couple usually on the books in the works. But if I can sneak in a trip here and there, like I'm on the water. And my family supports it, which is very awesome that they do, because that helps me. It helps me just like it's my therapy, so you can spend $150 with your therapist, or you can spend $150 on a rod.
right. That's true.
At least I get something with the rod,
Right. You get something in return. So is there a certain species that makes you happier to fish? Would you rather fish? You don't have to say walleyes. It can be whatever.
I really enjoy walleye fishing in the summertime. In the winter, I chase probably more crappie and panfish because so in the summer, I'm at the liberty of others. Most of my social circle are walleye anglers. I have a few bass anglers, even though I make fun of them all the time.
Yep. Which you should.
I do. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is, but I get so much hate for that. Right. Anyways, but yeah, so I have I would say I typically target walleye in the summer, panfish on the ice, just simply because on the ice I can bring my daughter. We just go. I'm completely self-sufficient. Her and I just go out sometimes, and I would still say my favorite is probably walleye.
Okay.
I think
there's a certain technique, certain way. Obviously, everybody likes pulling hand stuff, but
jigs, always.
Jigs.
Blades are fun. I mean, trolling, don't get me wrong, trolling is effective. I've caught some really nice fish trolling. But and obviously being from Minnesota, we can only have one line. I always have to have a rod in my hand.
Right.
So I prefer to jig. If we're trolling, when I come out here, it's usually a trolling game, except for like now and in the spring. But
Yeah, it's one of those things where trolling, I don't like trolling, but you know, if you have 6 rods that can be out, it's like, how do I not use it to find the fish? Especially, you know, this time of year. I like to normally I like to be up in Green Bay, and I'll just troll stuff because you can catch everything. You can catch muskies, you change your line over and put some leaders on there, your muskies, walleyes, everything's pretty much biting up there, and that's what's the best part about it. The only bad thing about trolling is you need more snacks.
Absolutely. Yes, you have to be able to.
It can be a long day.
Unless you get on a really cool, like
That's
a good
true.
school of
That's
like
true.
drum, because those will keep you busy for a long time.
Right? Are you using live bait?
Yeah. Yes.
So what's your all-time favorite thing? So if you're, let's get into ice fishing here. What's your favorite part about ice fishing?
My favorite part of ice fishing is I am self-sufficient. I can just go. I can do my thing. I can find my own fish. I can fish them. I don't, I'll go out and that's my me time. I think there's an element of difficulty because it's not like a boat where you can just drive over, it's a good workout. I mean,
Right.
drilling holes, I just like the ice.
Okay.
I would say probably just because I can be self-sufficient. I don't have anything holding me back. Open water, I have to either wait for an invite or call my friend and be like, hey, you want to go?
I gotcha.
Whereas the ice, I can be like, it's like a beautiful evening. I'm out, you know?
That's cool. And you're not bothered by the cold? You're not in the cold?
No. DSG makes some great gear.
They do. So do you think, as a woman fisherman, do you think there's any any stereotypes to you guys that's BS?
I think there's a lot
As I
of
just
them.
asked you if you were cold.
Well, I think there's a lot of them. I think they're becoming less and less stereotypical. You will always have the stereotypes out there that men are better anglers than women. I think there's a certain element to the stereotypical or the stereotypes that are said about women, whether they have men who find their fish for them or they don't last as long out on the ice because they're cold or like there's a lot of them. But it's really cool to see the power of social media starting to change that. And there's a lot of women anglers out there that can outfish most of the men I know. Like I feel like we take direction better. Like we learn.
Yeah, that's probably true.
A little quicker.
Probably listen a little better. I also think you kind of get in, I don't want to, I guess we'll put some people down here, but I kind of feel like marketing wise, like the fish companies don't market to ladies, and which makes it difficult, which is weird to me because it's a whole big market out there. There's free money just sitting there and nobody's willing to go after. Yeah. There's really nothing marketed towards women. I mean, there's some ice jackets, but I feel like they're more like kids/women together, like of clothing, but no one really goes after the woman audience.
There is one company that has, and they do a phenomenal job and they have a phenomenal product. And truly, because if you think about it, right, let's think 10 years ago, right? When women wanted to be active in the outdoors, whether it's fishing, hunting, whatever, what did they have to do? They had to gear up in men's gear. Whether it's baggy, it's too big, it doesn't fit right. Well, if you're uncomfortable, you're not going to want to do it. To find a company who has now keyed in on women and not just women of one size. I mean, they have a ton of, they cover everybody. And in order to do that and do it well, they know what they're doing. My entire wardrobe is from them. I mean, I am not part of their team or sponsor or anything, but I literally.
What works for you, right? And there's nothing else out there for you. You can't go to somebody else and be like, oh, well, I need a, give this, because there is not, that stuff's
Right.
not available for you.
Yep. If there are companies who are not marketing to women, they are missing a huge opportunity because women, there are a lot of women who are coming up in the sport, who are involved in the sport, who spend a lot of money in the sport and typically impulsively.
Guys, listen, but you're more impulsive. Yeah, that would be a see. That's better for marketing for them.
Yes. But there is a lot of money to be made with women, and there are a lot of them that are joining the sport, and they're hungry for good gear, all of the knowledge. I mean, there are a lot of them out there.
Right. Yeah, it's I think that's going to be, we always talk about the youth, getting the youth in sports or youth in fishing and outdoors. And to me, it's like, well, they're also ladies.
Yeah.
They have the youth they're kind of stuck by what their parents are going to do for them and what they're going to buy for them, where women have their own income. They can do what they want with what they need. So
yeah. And it's cool. Like, I volunteer with Future Anglers in Minnesota. And so we do a couple clinics. I think we do like 4 clinics on the ice, and then we have like 4 clinics during open water. And it's free to kids. You just have to sign up. I think we take the first 20, and it's really cool to volunteer with them because so many of the kids that show up are girls, and it can be intimidating when you're, a young girl and this guy is going to take you out on the ice. And so it's nice. Like I have a couple friends who also volunteer with them, and it's nice to just kind of add that, like, all right, you'll be okay. There's another woman here, and, let me teach you. And so it's really kind of special to be able to do that for these kids that, their dad drug them out, and, or their mom wants them to learn how to fish and she doesn't know how. So bring her out on the ice, it's just really cool, to give that knowledge back.
Right,
and these kids, to see these kids, like, they get so excited, even if it's a, 7-inch gill or something. It's like the coolest thing to them.
We have a similar one here, Future Anglers, and they have a tournament, and they kind of do it kind of like it's an actual like professional tournament where they get in the boat, we dump in the water. So
did you make videos on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was
so
just
that was
recently.
that was this last. They've been doing it for a while, and I got involved this last year. And I didn't have a boat to do it, so I couldn't be taking out fishing. So I helped everything else, and actually back to boats in the water, which actually that was really fun. I don't know why getting everybody else getting 100 different trucks and boats and backing them in was actually very interesting to me. But seeing when they came back and they had their totes with their fish in them, and people with catfish were just excited as people with a walleye. There was really no difference to them. They did like total inches.
Okay.
So the fish didn't really matter. So they had drum, they had all kinds of stuff. But and then they had a cleaning station where they'd clean them and send them home with what they caught. And I'm like, that's super
awesome.
cool. It was a lot of work for everybody involved. And I just backed cars and moved some stuff around all day long. So I didn't do as much as everybody else does, but it was cool to see that. And when I was there, actually, weirdly, I'm like, I see all these girls running around, and they all have Marianne Husky jerseys in the back. And later I found that she donated all her jerseys to them. So all these girls there was like 7 or 8 girls with Marianne Husky jerseys on. I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it was kind of neat seeing a bunch of little Lund girls run around.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw your content from, I think you were backing up vehicles, and that is quite the operation that they have.
It was. There was 8 of us, and I couldn't even imagine. There's some Mercury employees kind of run kind of some of the stuff behind the scenes there, and they take care of the backing and where they're parked, and because they don't get their keys, so everybody gets put in the boat.
Yeah. So
the pro, the anglers, and then the parent gets all put in the boat, and we back them in, and they splash in and all that kind of fun stuff. And but yeah, then we have to make sure we don't lose their keys and stuff. So it went pretty fast. I think it was 175 boats, and we put them in under an hour and 1 landing.
That's crazy.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's anytime you see the kids get out, it's a lot of fun.
For the full version of this podcast, check out Fix TV. And remember, follow me on the talk at Smile and Fish and everywhere else at Matt Snell.